In recent years, conspiracy theories have spread at full speed, taking advantage of the endless possibilities of a hyper-connected world. Among these theories, there is one in particular that is gaining more and more followers. One that is increasingly mentioned even in traditional media, which no longer take it as nonsense and present it with some suspicion. What a few years ago might have seemed like a simple, foolish exaggeration is now a topic of debate in extensive forums. They never tire of amalgamating clues to try to shed some light on a web of events that continues to become more complex and more sinister as time goes by. At the center of it all, a word that, by its own weight, seems to define everything, but still remains a complete enigma for most. Illuminati's Beyoncé wins lots of Illuminati awards. P. Diddy hosts parties at his house with minors present. Illuminati rituals, the assassination of Kennedy, man landing on the moon, Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, Illuminati, and more Illuminati. Wherever there are high spheres of power, hiding information or plotting something, the Illuminati seem to be present. Politicians, pop idols, and famous stars. Anyone who has a broad reach to the masses has been pointed out at least once as occupying a rank within this alleged secret group that has been orchestrating the course of the world for hundreds of years. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. New World Order, pacts with beings from beyond. What is the real story behind this group? How was it formed? How did it manage to infiltrate popular culture and penetrate the pop scene? And to have penetrated so deeply? What was its relationship with the other lodges? And more importantly, are they still operating? What do they do at their meetings? Well, to answer all those questions, today we're going to explore the dark side of the Illuminati. As always, it only takes the presence of a sufficiently curious individual for the course of history to change dramatically. In this case, the individual that we are interested in getting to know. He was born on February 6, 1748 in the electorate of Bavaria, and his name was Adam Weishaupt. Let's put this into context. The world was going through quite a few conflicts at that time. It's worth noting that in 1699, a war had started between Russia, Sweden, and Denmark, which had lasted almost 15 years. At the same time, the Western powers such as England, the Netherlands, Italy, France, and Spain were sustaining the famous War of Succession for the Spanish crown. Keeping an eye on this conflict, Scotland had joined England, both henceforth being called Great Britain. For his part, Frederick II of Prussia had been at war with Austria, England, and France since 1741. And what did this mean? That blood was being shed, that the geopolitical formation of the world map was in full boil, and that the winds of change could be smelled in the air. Intellectuals knew that ideas could create new ways of understanding societies. And it had already been proven that it took just a well-placed little push for a simple stone to turn into an avalanche capable of completely overturning the entire known structure. The experiences were basically few, turbulent, and a very young Adam, just 5 years old, had to face something even more mobilizing: the death of his progenitor. Would something then happen that would change his life and bring significant consequences that would reach to our days? Adrift and with no one to raise him, the little one ended up under the guardianship of his godfather, a man who was a law professor and a supporter of the movement known as the Enlightenment. He believed that the power of government should rest with the people, not with the absolute monarchy. Thus, they supported political liberty and the division of government powers. The enlightened people basically believed that the use of reason could help combat ignorance and superstition, which were also deeply rooted in those years. Adam was raised under these precepts, and he soon noticed that his ideas were discomfiting to his teachers. Teachers who in most cases were Jesuits, who placed faith and religion at the center of all worldviews. Despite the many problems his stance brought him, at only 20, the young man earned a PhD in law, following the path of his admired father and godfather. A few years later, he was already a university professor. Even though the constant controversies his ideals stirred up had put him on more than one blacklist, Adam continued to boast an intelligence that opened doors for him and brought him closer to powerful people. Even when in 1773 Pope Clement XIV abolished the benefits of the Jesuit company, he started to take on roles that until that moment were only suitable for the aforementioned Jesuits. During that passionate time, he embraced empirical philosophy and was excited about the future. Even in his student days, he had managed to evade the censure of his teachers, organizing himself together with other boys who thought like him. And how had they done it? Simple. By creating secret groups in which they shared authors and books critical of the ecclesiastical model. This method had saved him from becoming a loner as an adult. Adam wondered, why not continue down that path? The thought that was constantly spinning in his head finally settled when he realized that he was not entirely under the yoke of the Jesuits anymore. The new young people surrendered themselves to groups that wanted to explore things like alchemy. This drove him to despair, and he would write in his diaries that it tormented him to think how the most prepared minds ended up adhering to ideas that were not very useful for truly changing the society in which they lived. And so it was on the 1st of May 1776. Adam decided to use his influence as a teacher and adopted the name of Brother Spartacus. And he launched into the creation of another secret order. He was far from imagining the impact it would have. Of course, there were always doubts about the purpose of the order. After all, it was secret, and many of the things that happened inside in its early years, we will never know. The few leaks that could be obtained describe the Illuminati as a group that sought to promote the doctrines of equality and freedom while fighting against religion, in favor of rationalism. Some argue that it was truly about educated, influential individuals seeking to fulfill their need to feel significant. These detractors even point out that the internal management of the order was far from democratic or egalitarian, beyond what they professed. Did the Illuminati really have any relevance, or were they a low-key association? What is clear is that when choosing a symbol to represent them, Adam and his people had chosen the Owl of Athens, goddess of wisdom, the arts and techniques of war. The owl is a species of bird of prey very similar to the owl, which has been used as a representation of philosophy. Later on, another one of its representative symbols would be the Eye of Providence, but we will talk about it in a few minutes. According to what Adam himself would say, the society he formed soon mutated into a spy network, whose mission was, above all, to gather information. The Illuminati was believed to include members from various social circles. Each of these people brought their valuable observations into the order. And so the group began to gain significance thanks to its privileged position in the chain of events. Those who were in the Illuminati could access first-hand information that others did not have, which was always a positive factor, whether to make money or favors. It did not take long for the internal structure to derive into subgroups and for the ranks to become present, generating a wider articulation, and denying the initiates to have access, at least initially, to the most valuable documents. Increasingly suspicious of their actions, the Illuminati had a small upswing. Especially when, after gaining confidence in himself, Adam decided to investigate how other secret organizations were managed. In 1777, he entered a Masonic lodge in Munich, where he quickly caught the attention of higher-ranking Masons. True to his restless spirit, he suggested reforms. Upon reading them, everyone agreed that the subject was very intelligent, but also certainly arrogant, so he did not have much good acceptance in the long term. However, the experience served him for something fundamental, recruiting people to the Illuminati. That increasingly had more rules about what to read and what conclusions were permitted from those texts. Thus, the basic principle of the Enlightenment, which had served them as a foundation stone, was conceptually contradicted. What good was it to be free from the pressure of religion if they now had to submit to the scrutiny of other men who remained in the shadows? Adam then knew that if he wanted his order to remain standing, he had to make a few modifications. Rising in power. To avoid the discomfort that the group was starting to talk about, its founder decided to follow the advice of a former student of his. Leveraging his moderately popular arrival, he perfected the internal logistics. So, for 1778, Adam proposed the new name Well in Order, or the Order of the Bees, because it was imagined that members should gather the nectar of wisdom led by a queen bee. In time, he leaned toward Bund der Illuminaten, that is, Union of the Enlightened, and eventually returned to a motto closer to the original, choosing Illuminaten Orden, that is, Order of the Enlightened. This reorganization was accompanied by a more ritualistic structure, for which Adam had the invaluable help of the Saxon lower aristocrat, Adolf von Nietzsche. By 1782, Adolf had added to Adam's ideas. The entire organizational chart garnered attention from many new followers, particularly those from other secret organizations, as previously stated. Although the Illuminati adopted Masonic aspects, it is also true that they neither belonged to the same order nor cooperated in national Freemasonic organizations such as the Grand Lodge or the Grand Orient. Unlike other societies, the Illuminati had an explicit political program, whereas among the Freemasons, for example, religious, confessional, or political disputes are undesirable. For many, these differences were refreshing and promised new opportunities. These years were fundamental for the order of the Illuminati, not only to grow considerably, but also to manage to have infiltrators in other lodges. But of course, just as they extended their tentacles, others who didn't look at them very fondly also began to investigate them, infiltrating their ranks to try to discern what the Illuminati had to seduce everyone. Suddenly, with infiltrations on all fronts, an unexpected battle of the lodges began to take shape. Karl Gotthelf was born on September 11, 1722. He came from the ancient nobility of Silesia and owned significant properties in Lusatia. And we are interested in him because he was the founder and leader of the Strict Observance, the largest and most important high-level Masonic organization on the European continent. In the 18th century, according to Carr, the Strict Observance tirelessly reiterated that it was the direct successor of the mythical Templar Order, supposedly disbanded in 1312. With such a presentation, it's no surprise that Carr managed to become a sort of irresistible magnet for all those eager to join an association that promised great revelations, or at least to wake them from their slumber. As if this wasn't enough, Carr assured anyone who would listen that he was in contact with unknown superior beings. He said that these beings revealed secrets to him and gave him directives to follow. Those who believed in his words were left both astonished and filled with hope. Could it be that ancient Templars would reveal themselves sooner or later to divulge all the secrets of humanity? The positive and patient spirit of all Karn's followers crumbled when Karn himself died, and nothing happened. It was the year 1776, and there were no unknown superiors who came forward to tell them what path to follow. At that moment, even those who had defended the man the most decided to join the ranks of those who treated him as a mere impostor. Adam and his ally Adolf exploited this disrepute to build a great reputation. For 1782, they took part in various intellectual meetings, and they made it clear that their order, far from senseless fantasy, maintained a more interesting link with reality. Most of those present nodded upon hearing these words, and a murmur filled everything. Yes, it was time to abandon the Templar system. The Rosicrucians tried to cool the heated atmosphere. In vain. It is said that even main representatives of the Strict Observation switched sides, demonstrating how obsolete one organization was becoming compared to the other. Thus, the Illuminati became the new beacon. Adam had a unique opportunity in his hands, but he had to admit that taking the next step didn't seem entirely easy. How to now reconcile the interests of everyone who had joined his ranks? How to establish a new order where intellectuals had greater preponderance and could build a world where reason ruled? While trying to answer these difficult questions, as expected, some internal roughness arose. Not at all minor roughness that sooner rather than later put the continuation of the order against the ropes. Adolf believed that he had helped Adam more than Adam was capable of assuming. Therefore, when the other began to ignore him, the tension between them increased. Adolf then wrote a heated letter, in which he mentioned to Adam that he should not forget his important role. Otherwise, many secrets of the Illuminati, such as their names, could be exposed to the Jesuits or the Rosicrucians who were still eager for vengeance. Adam, far from letting himself be blackmailed, saw in this act a definitive sign of how Adolf had lost his way. Furthermore, he accused him of being very unwise, and wondered if it had really been beneficial to incorporate so many diverse members into his group. For starters, wasn't it at least a little dangerous to have among his followers people who defended the absolutist model or who had been part of the Freemasons? How did they know they weren't recruiting spies? Adolf chose to laugh at Adam and his paranoia. although it would later be proven that during those years, the Illuminatis had been admitting people whose only mission was to report what was happening within their ranks. One of the most resonant cases is that of Goethe, the prestigious author of Faust, who was there to investigate the recent and popular order. With an atmosphere that predicted imminent chaos, Adam and Adolf decided to take their differences out of the private circle, and in 1784, the Illuminati held a congress in which it was decided that it was necessary to build a new higher court. However, it became clear at the same Congress that Adam would continue to be a crucial part of decision-making, which most did not see as a bad thing. This was a hard blow for Adolf. Somehow everyone was in favor of Adam, which left him at a clear disadvantage. Instead of continuing with his extortions, he understood that he had been fairly defeated. He agreed to silence and discretion, handed over all his papers as a member of the order, and in July of that year he left the Illuminati. Adam thanked everyone for their support and handed over the leadership of the order to Johann Martin, a decorated count. It seemed like the stage was set for new golden eras, but there was a problem. All these disputes had made the authorities take notice of all these lodges that had appeared. The rumor that began to circulate among civilians unrelated to these matters was that powerful men were organizing in shadows to try to change the course of history, ignoring the welfare of the majority. It was said without apparent evidence that the Illuminati and secret orders in general, far from being just debating spaces, were a shelter for plans that included assassinations and attacks. It was said that at their core, secret organizations wanted to seize power from those who held it, to build a new power. Far from prevailing beliefs, worshipping gods already gone and surrendering human lives in harrowing rituals. With all these stories fueled by the media of the time, the elected Prince of Bavaria found the timely excuse to ban all communities, societies, and fraternities founded without his approval. That was the first step to start a hard persecution. Dissolution. March 2nd, 1785, everyone who had gathered some resentment towards secret organizations found a cause to join. That day, the Illuminati and Freemasons were branded traitors and enemies. Even the names of many of them were published, and there were house raids that had a wide impact. The ruling power did not miss an opportunity to talk about how radical the methods of these orders seemed, which they demonized with total impunity and without entirely substantial evidence. The Pope at that time made a statement on the matter, clarifying that anyone who was part of an order was denouncing the Catholic faith, agitators, anarchists, followers of Satan, eager to sow evil on the face of the earth, corsairs, pirates, witches, ruthless. Any description seemed destined to further deepen the pit into which they had thrown secret societies. Each of these descriptions also began to distort the reality of these organizations, which had no chance to defend themselves in public. Adam managed to keep his position as a founding member secret for a few months. However, when they tried to force him to accept his Catholic faith, he could not give up his ideals. And he chose to flee, confirming the suspicions that had already fallen on him. Around those years, Adam received the help of Duke Ernest II of Saxon-Altenburg and lived in Gotha, writing a series of works on Enlightenment. Of course, there were focuses of resistance, but it is believed that the anti-Illuminati movements were so fervent that any attempt to survive was mercilessly quelled. It was said with pride that the disbanding of the order had been complete, just in case. In 1787, it was ensured that anyone who was part of a secret order or wanted to recruit people could be condemned to death. At the age of 81, Adam died, possibly taking the history of the Illuminati with him. The stage seemed closed, however, among the authoritarian circles. The rumors persisted. They were rumors that kept on multiplying. They said that despite all the efforts made, the Illuminatis had managed to reunite. They said they were still operating in the shadows. They also said they were not just still alive, they were strong, stronger than ever. And that's how our story comes back to the beginning. The paranoia begins. There are those who argue that after everything that has been narrated, the Illuminati decided to redouble their clandestinity and take a much more active position. Yes, by wanting to fight them, they had made them more dangerous. In 1791, a French parish priest named Jacques-François Lefranc published a popular book in which he claimed that the French Revolution had been planned and financed by secret societies believed to be obsolete. Two other authors, the former French Jesuit Augustin Barwell and the Scottish scholar John Robinson, campaigned heavily to promote the contents of this book. Historians agree today that all were attempts to diminish the actual culpability of the revolution and to cover up the poor performances of the power figures of the time. After all, it was easier to say that the revolution had been an act orchestrated by people who hated the system, instead of analyzing what the power had failed in to unleash social discontent. Just in case, the Bavarian state minister in office in 1799 emphasized the need to ban secret organizations. Few knew then that he had become an Illuminati, and it is believed that his Great Discredit campaign was designed to point outwards and hide a past that could have led him to face serious consequences. To know how much the legend of the Illuminati's influence on world events had escalated, it's enough to know that George Washington, the first president of the United States, wrote a letter ensuring that he was doing everything in his power to rid his country of the Illuminati presence. Years later, the country's third president, Thomas Jefferson, was falsely accused of belonging to the organization, which in turn began to generate renewed ideas, where paranoia seemed to have no ceiling. Thus, the possibility was established that the Illuminati were now in concrete relation with the most prominent political actors. But then, were they looking to favor the status quo or to disappear it forever? The answer seemed elusive and became more confusing when William Guy Carr, a Christian fundamentalist and writer of conspiracy theories and anti-Masonic, made a controversial revelation in one of his books in 1955. In it, he published alleged letters sent between a Confederate military officer and a Freemason who had also been linked to the Illuminatis. These letters would have been sent between 1870 and 1872, and according to the writer, they were preserved by the library of the British Museum. These letters spoke of how the Illuminati had a future already written for the world, a future they had nurtured, generating world wars for establishing a new dominant structure. For what purpose? The British Museum's denial of the letters' existence raised doubts about who was being truthful. The man who would end up delivering a definitive blow would be a rather peculiar writer, a writer linked to Chaos Magic and Playboy magazine. One of the factors that increased the mythical presence of the Illuminati took place in the 60s when a book called Principia was published. Discord, which established a belief system known as Discordianism. And partly, it promoted the subversion of social order and civil disobedience. Although it was a kind of parody, those pages stimulated many. The fact that during those years it began to be revealed that institutions such as the CIA admitted the presence of secret programs helped the imagination to shoot without limits, and distrust became common currency. One of the followers of Discordianism was the writer Robert Anton Wilson. Wilson was a counterculture writer linked to mystical currents that believed in art as a tool of provocation. Under this premise, in the year 1967 when he was working for Playboy, he and a colleague began to send fake reader letters talking about this secret elite organization called the Illuminati. Then they sent more letters to contradict those they had just written. The plan was to spread misinformation through all the portals to generate chaos. Then they edited the Illuminatus trilogy, which generated links between the Illuminati and events like the death of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The books were a success. They were adapted into a play in Liverpool and were replicated by some magazines that never clarified that they were fiction. Things went so far that the Illuminati universe would end up linked to hip-hop by the hand of the legendary Prodigy, who in one of his songs would write, "The Illuminati want my mind, soul and body." The content of this trilogy also served as inspiration for works such as The Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons by Dan Brown, which were a box office smash. And they revived the passion for theories that talk about ancestral groups that, being above us all, manipulate us like puppets. The purpose of these groups today? Well, it depends on who you ask. Some say that the Illuminati seek to exert subliminal control over the population. Those who adhere to this maintain that great figures such as Beyoncé, Jay-Z, George Bush, Hillary Clinton, Kanye West, Lady Gaga or Miley Cyrus would effectively be Illuminati. That they are brainwashing us without us being aware. These ideas expanded when it was corroborated that many of these artists often use more than suggestive iconography. As mentioned, one of the most symbolic representations of the controversial secret Illuminati is the pyramid with the Eye of Providence. However, this pyramid symbol is not exclusive to the Illuminati. But likewise, it is true that it is impossible to use it without generating a direct link between one thing and the other. From his early years, Jay-Z, for example, was very prone to using this kind of iconography in his shows, stage art, and even when posing in front of a camera. Seeing him making a triangle with his hands became so common that many journalists asked him about it. Jay-Z always responded with a smile that what he was doing with his fingers was the symbol of a diamond, as a sort of demonstration of his desire to sell many records. This answer calmed the waters for a while, but then theories that he was hiding something began to re-emerge. More precisely, when, in the year 2018, Jay-Z submitted legal documents to obtain the exclusive rights to the iconic symbol. Strange, right? Others say that the Illuminati would perform bizarre rituals in which they would use children and innocents to ensure immortality. Thanks to contact with forces from beyond, these secret societies would also take care of benefiting their chosen ones, giving them fortunes and eliminating their most direct competitors. But then, do they want to play with our mind, or do they want to use us as a farm to feed from? One way or another, the Illuminatis, who started as a group of second-hand intellectuals, would today be the owners of reality. It's up to you to decide what's true and what's a lie in this story, based on what is believed or what people want to believe. So, if anyone approaches you and asks you anything we've never met,